Welcome back, everybody. Today we are going to explore one of the most familiar and fascinating objects in the sky, the moon. Even though we often see the moon, right, almost every night, it doesn't look the same every night, right? Sometimes it looks different. Sometimes it appears as a thin crescent, sometimes as a big full circle, and sometimes it just disappears entirely. At least it looks that way. These changing views are called moon phases. As we learn about the phases of the moon, we'll also discover how the moon affects Earth through tides, light, natural patterns, and even farming traditions. By the end of this lesson, you will understand not only what the moon looks like, but also why it changes and why it matters. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Miss Bree. I'm an educator, a farmer, an illustrator, a singer, and a proud grammar nerd. Welcome to the Farm School. So, what is the moon? The moon is Earth's only natural satellite, which means it's a large object in space that naturally travels all around our planet. Unlike the sun, the moon does not make its own light. The reason it appears to glow is because it reflects sunlight back towards Earth. In other words, when we see moonlight, what we are really seeing is sunlight bouncing off the moon and hitting Earth, right? The moon is always out there in space, even when we can't see it from Earth. Its appearance changes depending on where it is in its orbit and how much sunlight is shining on the side we can see. The moon is also relatively close to Earth in space terms, about 384,400 kilometers away. Even though that sounds really far, it is our closest neighbor in space and plays an important role in Earth's natural systems. One of the most important things to understand is that the moon does not actually change shape. The moon is always round no matter what. What changes is how much of its sunlit half we can see from Earth. So here's what's actually happening. Earth is moving around the sun. The moon is moving around Earth, and the sun is always shining on half of the moon. So as the moon travels in its orbit, the angle between the sun, Earth, and moon changes. And because of that, we see different amounts of the lit part of the moon. So when the moon looks like a crescent or a half circle, it's still completely round. We're just seeing a different portion of the bright side. The moon goes through a complete cycle of phases again and again in a repeating pattern. This full cycle takes about 29 days, give or take a day, which is almost 1 month. That is why the moon has often been connected to calendars and the passing of time. The moon phase cycle is predictable, which means scientists and sky watchers can know exactly what phase the moon will be in on a certain date. This repeating pattern helps us to understand that many things in nature follow cycles. The moon's changing appearance is one of the easiest natural cycles for us to observe with our own eyes. The new moon is the phase when the moon is between Earth and the sun. During this phase, the side of the moon facing the sun is lit up, but the side facing the Earth is dark. Because of that, we cannot usually see the moon at all. Even though it looks like the moon has completely disappeared, it's still there. It's simply positioned so that the dark side faces us. The new moon marks the beginning of the lunar cycle. From this point on, the visible light begins to grow a little more each night. After the new moon comes the waxing crescent. This is the first phase when we begin to see the moon again. A thin sliver of light will appear in the sky. Now, the word waxing means growing, or getting bigger. That tells us that the visible light is increasing each night. The moon is becoming brighter and more visible as it moves farther along in its orbit. This phase is often seen in the evening sky and reminds us that the moon is beginning yet another journey through its cycle. Next comes the first quarter phase. In this phase, we can see half of the moon's lit surface from Earth. So even though it looks like half a moon, remember the whole moon is still there and still whole and still round. We are only seeing half of the bright side. The first quarter happens about 1 week after the new moon. This phase is a good example of how our view changes as the moon moves around the Earth. The light is still growing during this phase, and the moon continues getting brighter night after night. After the first quarter, the moon enters the waxing gibbous phase. Now, we can see more than half of the moon is lit up, but it's not yet fully bright. The word gibbous means swollen or bulging or humped, which describes the shape we see. It almost looks like the moon is full and continuing to grow brighter. Okay, so it looks like it's almost full, but not quite there. This phase helps us see that the moon's cycle does not just jump from one major phase to the next. It changes gradually, little by little, every single day. The full moon is the brightest and most noticeable of the lunar phase, of the lunar cycle. This happens when Earth is between the sun and the moon, allowing the full face of the moon to point towards us to be lit by the sun. At this point, the moon looks like a complete circle. A full moon can brighten the night landscape, lighting up fields, forests, roads, and water. For many years, people used the light of the full moon to travel, work, and observe the natural world at night. Because it's so bright and easy to see, the full moon has played an important role in stories, traditions, farming, and calendars throughout history. Also, side note, I've just realized that I made this drawing wrong. The moon should be on the outside of the Earth there, so just imagine it's on the right-hand side of the Earth. So sorry about that. I will fix it. After the full moon, the light begins to shrink. This phase is called the waning gibbous. The word waning means decreasing. So now the bright part of the moon is getting smaller each night. Now, with the waning gibbous, the moon still appears mostly lit, but you can now see darkness beginning to cover part of its surface. This phase shows us that the moon cycle is moving toward the darker phases again. So, the moon is still following the same predictable pattern, just now it's on the second half of the cycle. After the full moon, the light begins to shrink. This phase is called the waning gibbous. Okay. This is the last quarter. I'm so silly. So sorry. So, the last quarter, which means we see half of the moon illuminated. Okay. This time, the visible light is decreasing instead of increasing. Again, right? It's still getting smaller. Okay. So the last quarter is halfway between the full moon and the next new moon. This reminds us that the moon cycle is symmetrical in many, many ways. We move from darkness to brightness, and then from brightness back towards darkness again. The waning crescent is the final phase before the moon returns to new moon. And in this phase, only a thin crescent of light remains visible. Each night, that sliver becomes smaller and smaller. Soon, the moon will appear invisible again, and the cycle will begin all over. This phase helps us see that the moon's journey is continuous. It doesn't stop. It simply moves through the same pattern again and again. Now that we've covered the moon and its phases, let's talk about how it affects the Earth, right? The moon does much, much more than change shape in the sky, right? It also affects Earth in powerful, powerful ways. One of the moon's most important effects is on the tides. The moon's gravity pulls on Earth's oceans. This pull causes the water to bulge outward, creating high tides. In other places, the water becomes lower, creating low tides. Usually there's 2 of these each day. So as Earth rotates, most coastal places will experience about 2 high tides and 2 low tides each day, usually about 12 hours apart. The strongest tides, called spring tides, happen during the full moon and the new moon, when the sun, earth, and moon are lined up in a way that strengthens the gravitational pull. This shows us that even though the moon is far away, its gravity has a real effect on our planet. Moonlight is another important way the moon affects the Earth. Now remember, moonlight is really reflected sunlight. Remember, the moon does not glow on its own. It's not like a glow stick. It shines by reflecting the sun's light. Even though moonlight is much dimmer than sunlight, it still makes a big difference at night. It can help animals move around, hunt, find food, and even avoid danger. For people, moonlight has been important for thousands of years. Before electricity, a bright moonlit night could help with travel, outdoor chores, and nighttime work. On farms, moonlight sometimes helped farmers finish tasks after sunset, or observe animals in the pasture or the barnyard. For centuries, farmers around the world have paid close attention to the moon. Many farming traditions connect moon phases with planting, growing, and harvesting. Now, some farmers believe that waxing moon phases, when the light is increasing, are best for planting crops that grow above the ground, such as corn, beans, and tomatoes. Other traditions say that waning moon phases, when the light is decreasing, are better for planting root crops, like carrots, onions, potatoes, etc. Some people also believe the moon's pull may actually affect the moisture in the soil, just like it affects the water in the oceans. So whether used as science, tradition, or observation, the moon has long been an important guide in agricultural life. One of the most important lessons that we can learn from the moon is that nature follows patterns. The moon changes in a cycle that repeats every month. This is similar to many other patterns that we observe in the natural world, right? Day and night repeat every 24 hours. Seasons repeat every year. Plants sprout, grow, flower, and rest in cycles. So when we notice these patterns, we begin to understand the world more deeply. The moon is one of the clearest and most beautiful examples of how nature moves in rhythms and cycles. The moon matters because it affects Earth in so many different ways. It helps create tides, it gives us light at night, it influences animal behavior, and has shaped human traditions, calendars, and farming practices. The moon also helps to stabilize Earth's tilt, which plays a role in keeping our seasons relatively steady. That means the moon is not just something pretty to look at. It's actually an important part of Earth's natural system. When we study the moon, we'll learn more about how connected everything in nature really is. So, as we finish this lesson, remember the moon is always changing in a pattern you can even observe for yourself. All you need to do is look up. Okay? I hope you guys really enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one.